All right, good evening, everybody. We're going to go ahead and call to order our meeting and start with a roll call for board director attendance. Director Banfield.
Here.
I think that was a present. Director Barrows.
Here.
Director Decker.
Here.
Director Sproul.
Here.
All directors are present. We did not have anyone sign up to give any public comments tonight, so we can head straight into our agenda. And I'm going to hand it over to Dr. Webb and his staff to take us through Magnet and School of Choice.
Thank you, Madam Chair. At the request of the board, Mike and team are here to present a review of, hang on here, we've got an event outside of the office here. I'm going to need to check. Let's just pause here real quick. Okay, I think we're good. Mike and team are here to present at the request of the board a review of data and program access relative to the district's magnets and schools of choice. We've got quite a bit of ground to cover here. So I'll ask that we withhold questions unless it's a clarifying question about data visualization or representation until staff has an opportunity to complete the presentation in advance of the board's deliberation. So with that, I'm going to turn this over to Mike.
Thank you, Dr. Webb. I appreciate the opportunity to share information about our magnets and schools of choice programs. I want to introduce the team here to you to make sure you know who's going to be presenting here tonight. I've got Jim Gray, Executive Director, Teaching and Learning, who has oversight of programs of choice. And Jim also is a high school principal at Skyview with one of those programs. We also have a couple other folks on here tonight who have been high school principals at these programs as well. So if we need their expertise to rely on history, and we can call on them, but I won't call her out now. Oh, Christina, right now. And Mark Reith, Director of Career and Technology Education. Paul Stern has done a lot of work with our team here, and he's our data strategist, and enjoy working with Paul. We've spent a lot of time in magnet data over the years. Lori Rotherham, Principal at VSAA. Darby Mead, Principal at Itech Prep. Alex Odepal, Principal at Columbia River High School, and Andy Meyer, Principal at Skyview High School, will be sharing a little bit of information about their programs as well. As you all know, Vancouver Public Schools has a rich history of magnets and school choice program development. And just to give you some context here, you know, the program development dates back to the initial meetings of the Columbia River High School staff back in 1993. I can tell you, I was a staff member at Columbia River High School, and when we initially were talking about the IB program and studying it as an option, and through our investigation, the program became reality in 1994. Soon thereafter, in 1996, in the fall of '96, VSAA came on board, and then the following year, the SMT program at Skyview High School was born with the opening of Skyview High School. And that was several years in the making for those programs. And then we worked in 2010-11 to open and prepare to open Itech Preparatory in 2012 at two sites, at JPC with the middle school, and then the high school program on the WSUV campus. These schools and Flex Academy and the half-day magnet programs at Fort Vancouver and Hudson's Bay High School were developed over this 27-year span of time, really to meet the interests of families and students and really give our families choice. I'm really proud to say, having been around this district for so long, that they really are the envy of a lot of systems because we've done something special to meet the needs of our families and our students. And it's been a treat to work with all of these and identify and create programs of choice to meet these differing needs of families and the rich history with Vancouver Public Schools. Over this time, there have been continuous efforts to study our student populations of these programs of choice and it's been cause for a continual refresh of our district-wide and school-level outreach. In particular, our study of equity and access in schools and services the past 5 years has been a focal point also of these schools of choice and magnet programs in terms of how we look at outreach. And the team's going to talk to you a little bit more about that outreach and the growth of that outreach incrementally, or I should say continuously, and then additionally over the past 4 to 5 years. We will also then spend some time talking to you about and sharing information with you about the application and selection process. And then we will share specific data about our magnet programs and schools of choice. And then we'll really drill down, and we have some information and data to highlight relative to Itech prep and the VSAA application and selection processes and accompanying data. So let me share a screen here. There we go. And with that, excuse me. I'm going to jump right here to the introduction of Jim Gray and Mark Reith, who will review our student and family outreach efforts here in Vancouver Public Schools. So with that, Mark.
Dr. Strom, you can go ahead and go to the next slide.
Oh, sorry about that.
Yep. One more. There you go. Good evening, everyone. Good to see everyone again. Historically, buildings or individual programs participated in building-led student and family outreach efforts. Those school-based efforts were intensified as centrally organized and supported efforts were added 4 years ago. Two of those highlights over the past 4 years include what you see here. First, in 2018, the district magnet fair at Roosevelt Elementary for incoming 6th graders. It had, it was centrally located for accessibility. It was an evening event so more parents could attend. All programs across the district were represented. We had interpreters present, and on-site application support was also available. So we're super proud of that part. In 2019, middle school students were bused to a centrally located event. The busing was provided for all students, and all magnet programs were represented there also. So next slide, please.
Good evening, everybody. Again, Mark Reith, Director of Current Technical Education for the district. Happy to be here tonight and talk to you about this. I do believe that this slide was a part of your packet, so I just wanted to bring up a couple things because I'm sure you already reviewed it. One is just bringing to light that we created this document to be purposeful to show you how everything is compounded. So I just want to make sure that you understand that in year one, 16-17, those are the main initiatives we did. The bolded items, for example, are we went to some automation in the system where it used to be that students had to approach their folks to get those letters of recommendations, have them fill them out, upload them, and send them. But because of our transition to our application process, it became automated. So all those things in 16-17 happened. And then if you look at 17-18, everything in 16-17 happened again. And then we also added the extra items in 17-18. And then same goes with 18-19 and 19-20. So really what I want to bring up and highlight is the fact that we continue to push and promote these programs extensively and come up with new innovative ideas and ways to spread the word more equitably and to more students and give everyone an opportunity to get information about these programs because we're very proud of them and we want kids and parents to know about them and have opportunity to participate. So again, I won't belabor this because I know you've had a chance to review this, but wanted to explain how the document was put together.
Thanks, Mark. Go ahead and move forward, Dr. Strom. And one more, please. So the magnet program process ultimately includes 3 distinct processes: application, acceptance, and finally enrollment in those programs. The online application software for all of our programs is School Mint. We moved to that program in the 2015-16 school year. Previously, students accessed a fillable form that was much more difficult to access and navigate for our families and school. In School Mint, all programs have some basic questions common to all the programs, and then they can customize that. Each program can add additional questions as part of the application process to give information to applying families or to gather information for the potential programs of choice also. Next slide, please.
So as with the other slide, I believe this was included in your packet as well. So I just wanted to bring out a few items to make sure you understood the document correctly. So this is a visual representation of the online application process through School Mint. And as I'm sure you noticed, the top area with all those bullets, those are the questions that are common to every student. So every student that goes in and registers in School Mint to apply for a magnet program, those are questions that they all have to answer or be assisted in answering. And then below the line, represents all of our different magnet programs. And this is an opportunity through School Mint to customize the application process. So these are examples, and I will say they've been abbreviated for the sake of creating this one document. You'll notice some where it says choose one of 4 and we didn't list the questions. But our principals, I believe, are going to be able to expand on these a little bit more if you have questions about them. But the idea is that these are used not only for application, they could be used as part of the application, but more so, I would say, they're used for information. So the students apply in the top, and then once they bring these students in, they use this information asked of students to help support them through the application process or get student interests or even just do self-surveys of what brings their attention to this particular magnet program.
Okay. Next slide, please. To give us a better idea of the programs, the processes, and even the kids in their programs, we've invited Principal Lori Rotherham from VSAA, Principal Darby Mead from Itech Prep, Principal Alex Odopal from Columbia Rivers International Baccalaureate Program, and Principal Andy Meyer from Skyview Science, Math, and Technology Magnet to talk to us tonight. These programs were chosen fundamentally for 2 reasons, because they are the largest examples of full-day programs in our district, and they represent programs that pull the most student applications from across the district in proportional quantities. So without further ado, we'll go to the next slide, and Lori.
Good evening. It's great to see everyone this evening. So I'm just going to talk to you a little bit about the kind of student who may be interested in our school, some of the outreach efforts that we do in addition to what you saw with what Mark shared, and then also talk about our application process. So Vancouver School of Arts and Academics is an arts-centered school of choice, and for the past nearly 25 years, we've enlisted an application process that's designed to get to know students who want to learn through the integration of arts and academics. This process has not included grades, attendance, discipline, or standardized test scores. Rather, it was designed to identify students with a passion for the arts and a desire to collaborate. The result of this intentional process has been a positive school culture, one in which our artistically minded students thrive. And while we're not a conservatory, many of our students go on to professional careers in the arts. Our students step out of their comfort zones and experience all 6 of our art forms. They write regularly. They engage in an integrated core class in which they view topics through the fundamental questions, which is a challenging inquiry process. They complete projects in which the arts and academics are integrated, and these projects become increasingly more complex and eventually become a senior culminating project during our students' final year at VSAA. This shared perspective has allowed us to build a strong school community. As students regularly perform for one another, there's a culture of respect, gratitude, and appreciation for performance and shared experiences. As students dedicate themselves to artistic and academic challenges, there's also a shared commitment to engaging in academic rigor, to supporting the learning of others, and to pushing yourself to grow in the arts and in your learning. So we have done all of the outreach that Mark shared, but I wanted to just highlight a few additional things that we've done. One of the things that we consistently do is visit all 5th grade students at the elementary level. We arrange this through the arts teacher typically, and for the past several years, we've done this collaboratively with Itech. So we bring a team, they bring a team, and we meet with the kids together. We share about our programs, and then we answer any questions that they may have, and then they take a brochure home to their families. And we also hold an optional parent and student information night. And we offer our application workshops on campus during the school day at our 5 highest poverty schools. I also want to share that we indirectly inspire student interest in an art-centered education by offering outreach. Our students and faculty give back to our community in a variety of ways. So we do something called the Day of Art every year that National Honor Society does. They bring in 4th graders throughout the district for an evening of a variety of art activities. We have hosted the after-school free dance program at our building for the past, I think this will be our 9th year. We may be doing it virtually if we do it this year, but and then we also often have our students mentor middle school and elementary students through their senior projects, and then our music and art honor societies. And VSAA leadership actually has also been responsible for the implementation of the 5th grade band and orchestra programs district-wide, and free after-school summer and arts opportunities. And again, these are opportunities for VPS students to develop a passion for the arts and to see themselves at a school like ours in the future. So I'm going to share just a little bit about our process, and then I will pass it on to the next presenter. We want multiple perspectives on a student. So our process consists of recommendations from a classroom teacher, arts teacher, and principal, a teacher-led art form activity in the art form of the student's choice, an interview with 2 staff members, writing to a prompt, and all aspects are scored on rubrics, which I know you have in your packet. And any student with an IEP or 504 plan receives the appropriate accommodations in every component of the process. Ultimately, this process includes the perspectives of 7 individuals, and the cumulative scores from all of these are the basis for acceptance and waiting list status. Any parent of a student on the waiting list who requests a meeting to look at their student's scores with the principal is provided the opportunity. And I just want to share that we have great students on the waiting list every year. This is a function of our small size and not a reflection of their artistic or academic ability. The good news is that our construction has just begun, or at least our construction fence is up, which bodes well for the actual construction beginning. And we will begin the expansion from our current population of 600 students to an eventual maximum of 800. And this will allow us to maintain our small school environment in which we know our students well, but provide opportunities for more VPS students who wish to attend our school. Thank you. And then I think Darby Mead is next.
All right. Well, thank you for having us this evening. We're excited to be here. Talk a little bit about Itech and our program. Our mission is around empowering students to engage in their future by fostering innovation and resilience, using project-based learning and a focus on science, technology, engineering, and math. Students that tend to that thrive here and be interested and be drawn to Itech are students that are interested in STEM, interested in working collaboratively with others through project-based learning, inquisitive students, critical thinkers, and then also one of our foundational ideas is that they're willing to take risks to solve problems. We have a kind of an acronym FAIL, first attempt in learning. We expect students to seek answers with questions that aren't answers aren't readily available, and that requires not getting it right the first time often. And so we really encourage student, staff at every level to try new things and really to look at that first attempt in learning. We're not going to languish in our failure, but we'll use it as an opportunity to learn and move on. Persistence is something in our program that brings students a lot of success, and then a big component of our program much like many of these magnet programs, is public demonstrations of learning. So our students, not necessarily just showing a project or idea, but really demonstrating what they've learned and being able to interact in a public setting, whether that be with parents, whether that be with industry professionals, but willing to engage in that. And then ultimately all of this, our project-based learning environment and our focus on STEM is to accelerate student learning, to get them ready for an early college experience when they enter high school here at Itech. Outreach, our outreach has kind of evolved. In 2012, Christina and team opened Itech, and we looked at how can we best get the message to students so that we get a wide variety of applicants throughout the district. And ultimately, you know, because we're a random lottery, the way that we can affect change in our demographics is through applications. And so outreach became very important to us, and we've continually refined that throughout our process. Initially, we would go to middle schools and have people come to those middle schools to get information about Itech. As we learned and grew, we went to, like Lori said, what we've eventually come to is that we go out to every 5th grade classroom with VSAA in the district so that all kids get information on Itech. Other things that we've done is we've developed summer robotics camps for elementary and middle school females in Vancouver Public Schools. We host events such as the Mother and Daughter STEM Tea, focused specifically on our female students and getting interest in Itech around that. We attend a lot of the information nights or elementary school events and have our robotics team or Science Olympiad or one of our programs go and really reach out to those kids, tell them about Itech and teach them about the opportunities that Itech presents. We also identified a gap in our demographics for Hispanic students about 3 or 4 years ago. And so we instituted a Spanish speaking open house night. So we have 2 open houses, and I'll talk about that in the application process, but we have had 2 open houses where kids could come and learn about Itech and make sure it was a program that they were interested in. We extended that to 3, and one of them is Spanish speaking for our Spanish speaking families, and to promote interest there and also get the word out. And I do a very short introduction piece at that event, and our students become my teacher to make sure that my pronunciation is correct and I don't make any errors there. And then also at those events, all of those open house events and the other events we do, we offer assistance in filling out applications. And we also this last year offered a robotics summer camp for students that were interested in that and interested in Itech, and it was run by our robotics team, our robotics students. So it was virtual, obviously, but you know, any way we can get the word out and really go to the students and get the information about Itech out to students in our district. Our application and selection process is a random lottery by zip code, and so we take in student applicants, and they are then put in through Schoolment into a lottery system, and we admit the percentage of students from a zip code that are represented in the demographics of the district. And we also have students come to open houses, and I talked a little bit about the Spanish open house that we have, and that one I didn't mention, but that also is run and organized, put on by our students in AP Spanish and translation interpretation. So that's a student-run event as well. And then students enter the lottery. The lottery is run, and our acceptance takes place via that as well. We've had, like Lori said, a number of kids on the waiting list in the past years, and we're very excited to have the opportunity now to be in our new building and to grow. We'll have a capacity of 700 students where we were at 400. So we're extremely excited to get back and get going. This was or is the first year of our growth. So we're excited, and we can safely do it to get back in the building and get to work. So that's a little bit about Itech. So I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Odepal.
Thank you. And I have audio, correct? Lori, I can see you Can you hear me? Okay, great. Well, good evening, everybody. My name is Alex Otopo. I'm the principal at Columbia River High School. The International Baccalaureate program, as Dr. Strom stated in the introduction, has been here since 1994. I've been the principal here for 9 years, so I'm just going to jump ahead to that 9-year journey, and I wanted to just highlight a couple of equity milestones in our process here as the International Baccalaureate program has evolved with student need and student interests and career pathways in mind. So about 8 years ago, the AVID program began at River. That's the Advancement via Individual Determination. And what we were able to successfully do with that implementation is offer AVID and the AVID student as complementary to the IB and not competitive. Because as you can see at the bottom of this slide, and many of you know this, that the full diploma program, the full IB diploma program requires more credits and more hours than the Washington State Diploma and the VPS graduation requirements. And so we are asking a lot of our students to complete the International Baccalaureate full diploma program. And what we've done is searched out and found ways that we can accommodate students' needs and interests if they don't have that full diploma in mind, and if they want to become a certificate candidate in the magnet program here at River. So in 2016, we were recognized by AVID as a school of distinction, and that really put us on the map in terms of these efforts to reduce barriers, but also encourage more students to apply and more students to participate in the diploma program and with their International Baccalaureate certificate program. What that meant was we got noticed, and we were invited to participate in the Excellence and Equity effort. That's the E2 effort with the International Baccalaureate. No, what that meant was there was 50 schools across the United States that were invited to participate, and really was a deep dive into the concept of creating International Baccalaureate opportunities for all students, ALL. All students. So it wasn't just a specific group that applied, a specific group that sought this out, a specific group that was recruited. It was IB and is IB for all. We began that application through the E2 grant, and then that led us to an opportunity to look at the career-related program as another opportunity for us to expand into the world of CTE. So we could create career tech education pathways that were supported with the rigor of the academics of the IB. So that has led us to investigating digital arts as a pathway for a career supported through the IB, computer science, mechatronics and health sciences labs are now present here at Columbia River High School. And with creating those opportunities, we have did apply in the spring for authorization to run the career-related pathway program. And so now we can. It's just a matter of getting students back into school and students beginning that program, which would start in the second semester. So again, that application process, kudos to the wonderful, excellent, seasoned staff at River that pulled off that application process, application and authorization during April, May, and June of last spring. Remarkable effort there. But the outcome is that we've created more opportunities for students to participate in the International Baccalaureate, whether that's the career-related pathway or the full diploma program, or if they just want to take a few IB courses as certificate candidates. A little bit about the application process, and this mirrors what we're trying to do with the college application process. We're trying to demystify and educate, bring more students into the fold by letting them know that we're here to support them. We removed any barrier around a math requirement. And that's been, again, going back to the effort to educate students on what they're exploring and what they're getting into. For the full diploma program, students have to be in geometry as 9th graders. So we've looked at that, removed that requirement, and stated to students, we have another opportunity for you through the career-related pathway if math isn't going to be a focus for you. And so that has opened up the door for many of our students. We use the 8th grade transcript and placement information, 8th grade report card and transcript for placement information for the 9th grade entry. We want to make sure students start that 9th grade year and that critical transition from 8th to 9th grade in the correct seat so that they can finish on time and pursuing a pathway that they truly are interested and passionate about. And we do have an interview process where students sit down and articulate what their plans are. They articulate how they problem solve. They articulate their strengths and weaknesses. And that's a challenge for any 14-year-old. It's also a challenge for a 16-year-old to commit to the full diploma program. And so we don't force students into locking into any particular schedule. We try to be as flexible as we can with student growth. So I believe that's what you need to know about the IB. One little piece to brag about. We continually thrive on the IB exams, 9-year streak of excellence with a 90% pass rate on the final IB exams. And again, students excel in that due to the prep of our seasoned and excellent instructional faculty here at Columbia River High School. Thanks. That's my time. I'm going to pass it to my friend up the street, Andy Meyer.
Thank you, Mr. Odepol. So I am, can I get the Skyview slide there? I am Andy Meyer, principal at Skyview High School. I want to talk a little bit about our program at Skyview. So the SMT program is a school within a school that has built a community of service and rigorous academic engagement. Our mission is to engage and empower students to become creative problem solvers through interdisciplinary research and application in the areas of science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. A little bit about the students who are drawn to our program. They obviously have a strong STEM interest, but are also interested in the rigorous academics that our program has and the ability to participate in project-based learning. We have our students that are drawn to our program often are attracted to the size of our building and the ability for student choice. We've got over 30 plus competitive arts and athletic options for our students. We have 35 student clubs. We offer 50 elective options for our students. We've got 33 AP and honors courses that students can take here at Skyview. And we have 43 different courses where students can earn college credits while here at Skyview. So all of those provide options for our students that draws them into our program. A little bit about our outreach. We participate in a magnet night and the other district promotions that everyone else does. We also engage in online promotions. We do site visits to the middle schools during the forecasting process. And we do a lot of internal recruiting for students once they get here to share about our program. Some things that we do in the community. Our robotics team has participated in science nights at different elementary schools. We've volunteered at Washington Elementary with their Lego night. We've participated in the Recycled Arts Festival, and we've partnered with 4-H Robotics to run a booth at the Clark County Fair. We've also just this year, in response to student interest, created a Women in STEM student club that will be helping with our recruiting efforts going forward. And we also rely heavily on our SMT Student Leadership Council in those outreach efforts. A little bit about our selection process for SMT. I think it's important to note that historically we have accepted all students who apply to the program. We do collect information through the application process, but that information is largely used to be able to help guide students through the forecasting process as they are selecting different course offerings as they come into our program. We do reach out to students who have incomplete applications, have a self-reported low interest in STEM, a C or lower in math or science, or don't have a recommendation from a teacher. And our magnet coordinator reaches out to those students, kind of walks them through the process. But again, that does not become a barrier for them to be able to be accepted and enrolled into our program. So I believe we're moving on to the application process with Jim and Paul.
Thank you, Andy, and thank you specifically to all the principals for that great information and for us all. We'd like to now take a look at the VPS student application and selection data on a broad scale. As we step through the data, keep in mind that there are 3 steps in the magnet process: application, admission, and enrollment. The decision to apply is predominantly led by the student and their family, with some influence by the district in the form of recruiting, marketing, and communication. One question maybe with this regard is, how much influence do we actually have on that process? The admission process is obviously controlled by the school, and the choice to enroll or not enroll is again with the student or family. First, let's take a look at the data about the magnet programs. For the following charts, we will focus on the entering cohort. Keep in mind, IB, SMT, ACES, and medical arts are open to students starting in the 9th grade. Careers in education, culinary arts, and welding are open to students starting in the 10th grade. Itech and VSAA are open to students starting in the 6th grade. While we recognize that older students can apply and enroll, by far the largest number of applicants for each program occurs in the entering cohort year. VPS programs attract students from all over the district. For instance, in the red outlined column in front of you, there are 110 applicants to the IB program at River. 31% of the applicants were from students who live within the River boundary. 13% are from neighborhoods that would feed Fort Vancouver. 21% have Hudson's Bay High School as their home school, 25% are in Skyview's boundary, and 11% come from our neighboring district, excuse me. The Itech and VSAA data represents the geographic boundary high school that they would have attended once they, once they entered 9th grade. Of note, most programs draw a significant share of students from other schools. Next slide, please. Acceptance rates for all programs based at our comprehensive high schools are very high, as you can see, ranging from 93% to 100%. Based on our conversations with principals, almost all of the non-acceptance students at the comprehensive high schools are because of incomplete applications or enrollment in other programs. The acceptance rates at VSAA and Itech are significantly lower in relation to the other programs of choice, due in large part, as Lori and Darby referenced, due to their high popularity but very limited capacity. As capacity increases due to the completion of capital bond projects, we should see a higher acceptance rates overall. Next slide, please.
Okay. Again, I'm Paul Stern, data strategist and a member of the assessment and performance management team. Thank you for letting me share some work that we've been doing. So, as has been stated earlier, the district can encourage students to apply, but ultimately it's the decision of the student or the family. In an ideal world, we want the pool of applicants to reflect a balanced cross-section of the student body as a whole. The next set of slides, this one and the following, reflect the characteristics of applicants across different demographic dimensions. Groups of students that are underrepresented present opportunities to further improve recruitment and outreach efforts. First, we'll look here at gender. In the circled program, medical arts, 23% of the applicants this most recent year were male, 77% female. We see similar rates for the education and culinary arts programs at Fort. In contrast, 100% of applicants to the welding program were male. I think this has a lot to do with student interests along with societal bias and association of certain genders to different career paths. IB, VSAA appeal to females more than males. The STEM programs at SMT and Itech attract more male applicants than female. ACES is our most balanced program. Next slide. When we look at how many applicants are eligible for free or reduced price lunch, the patterns are a little more troubling. With the exception of 3 programs at Fort, the percentage of low-income applicants is below the district average. In the circled example, 39% of applicants to the ACES program at Bay were low income. We discussed as a team whether to use a district or school level metric to assess whether a program is above or below average. But because in the case of Fort Vancouver, the school has the highest proportion of low income students in the district. And since to the extent that programs draw locally, it would not be surprising to see higher rates at for example, low income at Fort. However, given that these are all district magnet programs that draw from all parts of the city, a district comparison is the target that we chose to display here. Next slide. So while it's important to look at patterns for each racial and ethnic group separately, the data has less noise or is more consistent when historically disadvantaged racial and ethnic groups, Black, Hispanic, American Indian, and Pacific Islander, are pooled together. The complementary group then is white, Asian, and multiracial. Looking at the circled example, 30% of applicants to the welding program were from historically disadvantaged racial and ethnic groups. This is similar to the overall rate in the district. Again, IB, SMT, VSAA, and Itech are below the district average. Next slide. We see similar patterns when looking at students with disabilities. There's one correction to point out. The district percentage of students in special education last year was 12%, not 14% as reported on the slides sent to you last week. This makes the circled percentage, 8% for VSAA, not quite as distant from the district line as I had charted on your pages. It's closer here. Culinary arts, welding, VSAA, and Itech are below but close to the district average. ACES, careers in education, IB, and SMT are significantly lower. Next slide. In terms of English language learners, of note here is that there were no applicants to culinary arts, welding, or IB, and very few at SMT, VSAA, and Itech. Although it sounds like at Itech there is a plan to bring in more Hispanic and English language learner students moving forward. Next slide. And this one's yours, Dr. Strom. Unless you'd like me to carry forward.
I do a lot of listening here, and now all of a sudden I got to remember I have to unmute myself. I do want to, we wanted to take a little deeper dive here into Itech Prep and VSAA. Given that there are higher acceptance and enrollment rates at the programs based on the comprehensive high school data and information we shared, there are often more questions about how students are admitted and enrolled at Itech Prep and VSAA. So we have some additional data to share here. This gives you, and again, we recognize that older students can apply for admission at VSAA and Itech, but what we focused on here is 6th grade data for the spring of 2020, and what you see is the distribution of magnet applications. So you actually have to take the VSAA area in gray as well as the orange area because those are combined. Students may have also applied for both, and so they're added to that data there with VSAA. And likewise, Itech Prep with 156 students, and combine that with 114 students who applied for both. Okay. What's important to note further is take the orange slice, if you will, and that provides us a greater breakdown of 114 students who applied for both programs, or they asked to be considered for both programs. And we took a look at a 5-year pool of data, if you will. The students applying to both programs were 15% were admitted to Itech only, 24% to VSAA only, 15% to both schools. 46% of the students got into neither school, okay? And then of the 80 students admitted to both Itech and VSAA over that 5-year period of time, 30% chose Itech and 68% took VSAA, and interestingly, 2% of the students chose neither. The reason that we pulled this slide up here is to share where we started in the program at Itech Prep when we designed the admission and ultimately selection process to focus and to use a random lottery based upon zip code regions in the school district. So what you'll see is a map sharing the original 60 students that we admitted. If some of you may recall, we take a look at the entire student population of grades 6 through 12 for the district. And then what we do is we look proportionately at what share of those students reside in that zip code region for grades 6 through 12. And that percentage becomes the percentage of students who are admitted based upon the total number of available spaces. So if I take the 9865 area, zip code area, 25.66% or 15 students were admitted in 2013. If we compare that to 2020, this last year, it's still roughly 25%, but the amount increased. The number of students that we were admitted increased by 30. So proportionately, there were 7 more students admitted into Itech Prep from that area. What it does is it provides a level of reassurance relative to the equitable distribution of the admission of students in the program from over a 7-year or now 8-year period of time. And well, I'll go to the next slide and then I'll speak more about that. So here's another way to look at the data. We took a look at the 2021 school year admission, the students enrolled. And you will note here that the VSAA map on the left shows a high concentration of students west of I-5 and a very low concentration in that triangle area that borders SR 500 and I-5 and 205. What's interesting about the data with VSAA is there is a higher concentration even over, or historically, and we went and looked at a 3-year picture as well from that downtown core, which actually speaks to the high level of interest among families when we look at, and research shows this too, when you look at magnet and schools of choice programs, students really do like their neighborhood schools, and they like to be with their friends, and that does, and other programs that are there that they've grown up either being part of because of siblings, but it does influence decision-making and choice by families. Because the lottery selection process is a random one, you'll see a far more equal distribution on the Itech map on the right-hand side. But I was really interested in that triangle area. And so what we did is we did a little deeper dive in terms of that space. While we didn't do it by zip code, we just took the map and broke it into 4 quadrants that you see color-coded. And VSAA up in the upper left-hand corner in the blue area is 36% relative to the Itech Prep. The same area is 34%. If you go to the lower left quadrant in the yellow, as I mentioned a moment ago, there's a higher representation in the downtown core as a function of interest and proximity to the school that students see. At 42% at VSAA versus 27% of the students in Itech. Along the river there, the green is 24% for VSAA and 30%. But what's most telling for me, which is the reason I went to this with Paul in looking a little closer, is that we have an underrepresented group of students in that area. Where only 11 students last year of 86 students who applied come from that area. The elementary area there is those elementary school areas are, as I noted at the bottom of the slide, Minnehaha, Walnut Grove, Truman, and Sarah J. Anderson. And that's compared to 40% of the students at Itech Prep within that same area. And again, it's reason to believe Itech would be more equitably distributed. There are more there. It's a larger area, but it's about the zip code distribution as well. And Paul, I'm going to have you take this.
Okay. You get to advance the slide.
I do.
Yes. Thank you. So again, there are 3 steps as we've said throughout this. We want our applicants to look like our student body, and we stepped through some slides about what the applicant pool looks like. And we want our enrolled students to look like the applicants. We can't necessarily, if the selection process is equitable, then we want the accepted enrolled students to look like our applicant pool. And so these last 2 slides compare our applicants and our enrolled students, similar to the geographic data that Dr. Strom just shared. I pooled for these slides 5 years worth of data simply to ensure more stable statistics. I've looked at year-to-year patterns. They're consistent over time, but to minimize the noise, these are 5-year pooled again. So we've looked at geography. The question here is, how do applicants and enrolled students compare across some demographic characteristics? In the top chart, Itech in blue, using a blind lottery, achieves an enrolled 6th grade cohort that is very similar to its pool of applicants. For example, in the circle, 8% of applicants, 9% of enrolled students were students with an IEP. At VSAA, whereas 1/3 of our applicants were low income, only a quarter, 26% of the enrolled students got in. So there's a little more imbalance there. And finally, on the last slide, we can look at equity of access by examining admission rates. By definition, an admission rate is the percentage of students who enroll out of the number who apply. So looking at the circled data for VSAA, over the 5-year period, 339 students applied to VSAA with an SBA score in the level 2 range. Of these, 16% or 54 students were admitted and enrolled. 54 out of 339 is a 16% admission rate for that group of students. And this is again over 5 years. Similarly at Itech, we see that there have been 239 applicants with an SBA math score in the level 2 range, of which 55 or 23% enrolled. Again, each bar is the ratio it's a ratio of students enrolled as a percentage of applicants. So if admissions were blind to student characteristics, one would expect that if half of all students are admitted, then the data would show that approximately half the males are admitted, half the females are admitted, half students with disabilities, half students without disabilities, half of students who are proficient on the SBA, half of students who are not proficient on the SBA, would all have equal enrollment admission rates. If student characteristics didn't matter, this would be true regardless of the number of applicants. So this slide and the one prior answer the question, does every student have an equal chance? Equal opportunity is what Itech achieves in the chart on the right. Using a blind lottery, students enrolling at Itech have academic characteristics that are very similar to the applicant pool. While not everyone can enroll, all students have an equal opportunity to explore their interests. The process used by VSAA results in less balance across each academic group. Admissions rates for students who are not proficient on the SBA are significantly lower than for their peers. Over the 5-year period in math, only 6% of applicants, 9 students total out of 143 who applied with a math score in level 1 were admitted, compared to 40% of applicants, 206 students out of a total of 512 applicants who had a level 4 score. In other words, a student with a level 4 score in math was 6 times more likely to be accepted than a level 1 student. In ELA, only 9% of level 1 students were accepted, compared to 39% of the level 4 students. Or in other words, a student with a level 4 score was 4 times more likely to be accepted than a level 1 student. And I've explored these year by year, and the patterns have been relatively constant over that time period. So with that, turn it back to Dr. Strom.
Thank you, Paul. That concludes the presentation. And I imagine there are a great number of questions, and we'll do our best job possible to come back to the team members here that could answer those questions. I'll have to come back to see everybody here and stop share. You can always bring that back if I have to answer questions specific to a slide. But Wendy, I'm not sure how you'd like to handle it, or are there specific questions on specific slides that I can come back to support the board's interest?
Yeah, I mean, I think we will probably have you pull up some slides from time to time. But first of all, my compliments to the staff on putting a very thorough presentation together. That was really excellent, actually. And I appreciate everybody's contributions. That was very, very informative. I do have some questions, but I'm gonna open it up to the board if there's any questions first, and then I'll follow up with mine.
I'd like to just ask a question. So while it was, when we looked at the difference in admissions rates on among the different demographics in VSA and Itech, and then also looked at even at the SMT and the IB program, we see that certain demographics are poorly represented. But to the point, let's just go to one of the points that we were looking at, and that's the SBA for VSAA and the SBA for Itech. My question is, and we may not know this, but it would be interesting to know, of those students that are admitted and enroll at the L1 levels, how many of them stay? What's the retention rate for those students that are admitted that have lower test scores? Because it's not just about admitting students across these certain bandwidths, it's also about making sure that they're successful. And so I'm curious as to what the retention rate is.
Well, that'll be a question we could certainly follow up on, Kathy. That would take some digging. And we, as you know, we have pooled data there. So I'm not too certain how far back we could go with that, but we could certainly investigate that.
Thanks.
Yeah, that was I had the same question. I just want to say, just like across the demographics, how many people stay? Maybe we look at that in all professions, like 50% of women graduate from law school, but how many stay in the field? Because how comfortable is that field? So I think it's a really good question.
And I can't answer that question specifically. I would be very interested to see the data, but what I can say is that this is true for us, and I know it's true for Itech as well, that we do have a lot of supports in place at our building for students who struggle academically. And so it is always our hope that when students begin with us as 6th graders, that they stay for their 7 years, and that their advocate who started with them as a little 6th grader hands them their diploma. And I know a few of you have had connections with students at VSAA, and so you know about some of the wraparound supports that we offer that are pretty robust. And so again, I'd be interested to see that data, but I will say that I think there are some pretty strong supports in place for those kids who do enroll if they have some academic challenges.
And I appreciate that, and I think that's great. I think all our schools are doing such a good job in that way, and you guys in particular. I really also just want to see the demographics, like how comfortable are people staying when they go into a place when they're one of so many. How comfortable they are staying, or when do they decide to leave? And it may just, this was such a great presentation. I can't believe that all of the stuff you got out of it, but that was one of the questions I wrote down as well. So it's not just academically, I just would like to see demographically who wants to stay after a couple of years there.
Yeah, knowing that we're in the college search job position one more time. And I know one of the things we look at when we're trying to figure out where my child's going to go is what is the retention rate of the college that they're applying to. And so it would be interesting to know.
We'll see what we can do.
Thank you.
Other questions?
I had a question. Have you guys done this exercise before, or is this the first time?
We have not this comprehensively, no. We've worked on this for quite a while here because we wanted to make sure that we were giving, because I know that we have board members who are new, and we have some who have been in the system, some who have had high school students already through, and so you have different levels of understanding. So believe me, I had to share with we got awesome principals who have so much love for their school, and they're doing some awesome things. They want to share a lot, but that in itself, and some of these, you got to remember, they do open house nights where they're talking about their programs, and sometimes those are lengthy. So for them, kudos to them for getting that condensed in there and trying to be succinct about the wonderful things that are happening in terms of outreach, and continuously their programs are evolving, as you can see.
Yeah, this was amazing. There was an amazing amount of information and really clear. And I really like how you can see the nuance, like neighborhoods and how they attract obviously their own kids. And then, some of the differences that you see in the statistics are already being addressed before this exercise. So, hey, we started a Spanish speaking program to get the people in. And so I really appreciate, first of all, knowing how proactive already the people at the schools have been without even having the statistics. And now we have like you said, this deep dive. And if there's other things to do, you guys already have all the right people to start working on it.
Thanks.
I have another quick question, which is in the part of the display where you talked about students with disabilities. How is that defined? Is that students with IEPs, students with 504s? How do you define students with disabilities?
Paul can answer that.
It can be defined in several ways, just as you noted. In this case, it is a student with an IEP. We wanted to also look at students with 504s, but it didn't make it into this presentation.
I'd be interested to see if you add the 504s, how some of that jumps. I imagine if you add 504s, there'd be a little more representation at VSAA, because the 504 tends to not be as, I don't know. It tends not to be as strict as the IEP and requires less support. So anyway.
Yeah, again,
that didn't come out right, but
I know what you meant. Yeah,
as the husband of a school psychologist and the father of a boy with a 504, I understand what you're saying. Definitely.
Thank you.
And again, we can certainly dig into that a little further.
Yeah, Kathy, if I could just share, I know that we have 32 students on 504 plans, which, of our 599 kids, that's, and that's in addition to our kids on IEPs. And one thing that I will say that we have found is that often students with disabilities who have a passion for a particular subject really find ways to shine. And so I think that may in part be why we do tend to have, more kids on 504s than maybe you might expect, because they're kids that they have some really great strengths. They just happen to have something that's a challenge for them as well.
Those out of the box kids that they've learned to be successful, but in their own little box. And I think you'd find that too with the 504s, like at River and at Skyview as well, that those 504s will kind of add to the inclusion. Thank you.
Great.
I have a question. First of all, there was a lot of great information in the presentation, and I like the look through the equity lens, because I think that's something that as board members we're really kind of looking through that lens. I think there were lots of pieces where you identified underrepresented. Oops, I got unmuted. There were lots of places where there were underrepresented groups, and I think it was Darby had mentioned like they saw that there were the Hispanic population was underrepresented, so they did a Spanish speaking night. Are there other ideas or other ways that we are looking at trying to be more equitable in kind of building up those areas that are underrepresented?
Go ahead, Darby.
Oh, I was just going to say, Tracy, that's one of the things I think that probably all the programs do is look at demographics from year to year. Where are there gaps? The other spot we have, that we identified a gap in our data is with female students. And so we've sought out opportunities to present our program and get the word out there to groups of female students, like those summer camps, and just being intentional about who we send out to these elementary school evenings, so that kids are seeing a variety of people who are successful in the programs. So I think that's probably something that is done in a lot of the programs as well. But yeah, absolutely, and always room for improvement as well. So.
And I think I was going to ask Lori to share. Yeah.
Yeah. So one of the things that I think has made the biggest impact on our demographics in the last 4 years or so is our application workshops, where we bring the students in to write, be interviewed, participate in an art form activity. We do those, we've always done those on a Saturday on an evening at our school. But we started doing them on site during the school day at Roosevelt, Ogden, Fruit Valley, Washington, and King. And the result of that is we have enrolled more students from those schools, that we eliminated transportation as a barrier. And I was looking at, we look at our demographics, and this is the overall demographics. So this is not just the 6th grade admission, but the OSPI data. And in 2008, 2009, we were 85% Caucasian and 5.41% Hispanic. In 2019-20, we were 70.5% Caucasian and 13.7% Hispanic. So we're seeing a bump there in that particular demographic. And I think that is in part a direct result of those workshops on those campuses.
Thank you. Other questions?
If you don't mind hearing me again. Here's a question that maybe Alex can answer me. Mr. Paul, can you tell me, the career pathway for IB seems to be a really interesting concept, and it seems to be like one that you could really bring people in. Can you just describe a little bit about what it is?
Yeah, it's very similar. You're familiar with the theory of knowledge component and the extended essay component and the creativity component of the full diploma. In the career-related pathways, there's a course similar to TLK, not the same, similar to TLK. And that course is called Principles in Professional Skills. And so that is really identifying deeply and proactively what skills are going to be needed in not just a job, but a career. Additionally, there's a reflective project, very similar to the EE as you know it. And so it's a deep study into a particular area of reflection related to a career pathway that a student may bring. If it's an entrepreneurial pathway, a student may bring a product forward and talk about the reasons why. And then finally is a language component where a student explores a world language. And this is really keeps the identity of the world approach, IB for a better world. And so it's the idea of that international mindedness. So those three components kind of go deeper, but don't exceed the state requirements for the high school diploma. So that's a little bit how it's different.
That sounds like it will provide with a lot of opportunity for outreach to some of these students that are put off by the IB. Also, if your first language isn't English, being able to move into this kind of scenario sounds like a really big opportunity. Thanks for
also connects.
Yeah.
No, it also connects our students into the community in different ways. So I don't know if Mark, you want to jump in at all, but we're excited about this. It's new and we can't wait to uncork it as soon as we can get students back into the labs.
Yeah, I would just add, from the CTE perspective, we didn't have to invent programs. These are programs that already exist at Columbia River High School. What it does is it adds more rigor to these existing programs. As you know, we work really hard to create programs of study that lead to industry recognized certificates, early college credit, and pathways to post-secondary opportunities. So that falls right in line with some of these parallel goals with this program. So it's a win-win, I think.
Terrific. Thank you guys for both working on that. That's going to be terrific for River.
We really feel like it's the next step in an evolving program. So thank you.
Other?
Well, I have a list of questions. This is what happens, Mike, when you say we hold questions until the end.
I know.
I have a few more too, but I wanted them to hear other people's voices.
So they're going to kind of be all over the place, so I apologize for that. So my first question actually has to do with recruitment, because my understanding, you could correct me if I'm wrong, students can continue to apply to these, specifically VSAA and Itech, after 6th grade. Like if they decide in 7th grade or 8th grade or 9th grade, etc., they want to apply, they can still do that, right?
Correct.
So I'm just curious to hear from Darby or Lori, what kind of, you guys spoke very nicely about the recruitment efforts for like really focusing on 5th graders. Are there any recruitment efforts that happen at, say, like for 9th graders, for high school students who may have chosen middle school, a different middle school option, but would like to pursue high school, one of these programs for high school?
Darby, do you want to take it first in terms of students who come in or interested in the latter grades?
Yeah, and we've had a situation when we were in the 2 buildings where we brought in a chunk of students in the 9th grade because we had more space at the high school location than what we have in the past. And also there are students that are interested kind of in that early college piece. And so we have done some outreach in the 8th grade with some robotics camps and things like that to get the word out about Itech. So yeah, we have done some of that. We don't have a lot of openings, in 7th and 8th grade, going into 7th and 8th grade. So we haven't spent a lot of time there. Might be something to look at, but we have spent some time with 8th grade students and going to some of the middle schools. and getting information to them. This year we had a couple of students and our counselor. She had a little bit of extra time on her hands after visiting all the elementary schools, and she volunteered to go to the middle schools as well. So she took some of our students, our 8th grade students, and they were able to go out and talk to the kids about the program and do a presentation and answer some questions. So we've started to get into that. I think it's a great idea. I think it's somewhere we could develop even more, but that's where we're at right now. So.
And Lori, you might want to talk a little bit about, we know that at the 8th grade, there's some loss of students. They, for different reasons, choose the comprehensive high school programs. So there sometimes are spaces available. What do you do there at VSAA?
Yeah, so I know that just speaking from the district perspective, that CTE, Mark, you can let us know if it was last year or the year before, but started doing an outreach where they brought 8th graders in for a magnet fair. But the way that we do our outreach to students in middle school who may be, going into 9th grade is we typically do that through the art forms. So we do road shows where the band program might go visit several middle schools, perform for their kids, and then talk a little bit about our building. It's not necessarily all the art forms. The teachers kind of take the lead on that, but typically band, orchestra, choir, dance sometimes does that as well. But I would agree with Darby that we will need to step up our efforts a bit in the coming years because we are growing, and so we will be admitting a larger number of high school students in the next few years. When we lose students, typically the grade levels where we do lose them are 8th grade going into 9th. Quite a few of those students go to IB, and then others go to the comprehensives to pursue, they may want athletics, they may want pep assemblies, they may want a more diverse social pool as far as gender. We're about 65% female.
Please bring some more boys to VSA.
yes. Anyway, so that's typically 9th grade is that next grade level where we bring in quite a few students, and again, we'll need to bring in more. So.
And I'd echo Lori on that too. That's where we see kind of a transition is we have between that 8th and 9th grade. As well. And I do want to add that a couple of years ago, we started doing a combined dance with VSAA. So we kind of balanced things out in the spring.
I have to say that I was disappointed. I mean, I understand why Itech went where it was, but I always thought that white building that's been up for sale forever would make a great Itech right down by VSAA. And then you guys could always combine things, you're just balanced, but oh well.
Lori, can you tell me, or can you say again the names of the elementary schools where you said you held the workshops at the schools during the school day? Can you list those?
Washington, Ogden, Roosevelt, Fruit Valley, King. Is that 5?
It is, yeah.
Okay.
So that's, first of all, that's brilliant. I love that idea. And I think that, Mike, thank you so much for the map that you put together and you kind of crunch those numbers, because I think we're probably seeing the benefit of those. How many years have you been doing that?
I think it's been 4.
But I'm curious if maybe we should be thinking about looking at those schools in the pink triangle as Mike pointed out, where there seems to be a little bit less representation. Because I think you're seeing it in some of those other areas where those schools are at, for sure. Can I ask a question about the Itech Lottery? First of all, for those watching at home, this was only some of the information that the board was given. Our briefing on Friday was even more comprehensive than this presentation. And so there's a lot more information in terms of the application process and stuff that the board was given in advance. And thank you everyone who was involved in putting that together, because it was a lot of information. For the lottery program for Itech, there is a prioritization that happens. It's not necessarily just a straight lottery of people who apply, right, Darby?
Correct.
And I'm looking at the information you guys sent us. There's like 10% that goes to Battleground because of the location, I'm assuming, of where your school is. And then the next priority is applicants who live within the Vancouver boundaries and attended the open house. And then the next one is applicants who attended an open house but live out of the district, right? And then the next one after that is applicants who live within Vancouver boundaries but did not attend the open house. Can you speak about like the open house, and like obviously it has a lot of weight in determining where you're put on that list. Can you tell us a little bit about the open house and like how that works and why is it like just so important that people go to that?
Absolutely, yeah, and just number wise, and I don't have them off the top of my head, but very few kids apply and don't attend, you know, one of those options. So really, it's about understanding what the program is about and making sure that it's a good fit for your student. So we've put a priority on that because it does allow people to understand what the program is about. And you know, we wouldn't want somebody, you know, you guys were talking about retention rates and things. We wouldn't want somebody that wasn't interested in the program or wasn't a good fit for the program to you know, pursue it. And so it's an opportunity for us to let parents and students know that you know, what the program is about and kind of what interests thrive in our program. And also I want to add, it isn't just those 3 open houses. We also, if people can't make it to one of those, I mean, Zoom's a great opportunity. We ended up doing that quite a few times in the spring and Zooming with people. Really, it's about, and we absolutely understand that sometimes people can't make it to those. Transportation might be a barrier. We talked to a family that you know, said, hey, can we do something, you know, via phone, because we you know, it takes us an hour and a half to get from our house on the bus to, you know, one of these sites. And so we've been very you know, we try to problem solve around if people can't get to those and help them you know, access that information. But really it's about just understanding what our program's about, because it is a newer program and we're a little bit different here, is one of our phrases that we like to use. And so, you know, just making sure that it's something that student wants to pursue and is interested in.
Are all of those open houses, I'm assuming they happen in your very beautiful building there on campus, or do you have them at other locations too?
Well, we didn't. So last year we did one, we've done them downtown at our JPC location. Last year we also offered one up at Skyview. And then you know, ultimately that's really something to look at this year is, you know, obviously we're way up on the corner. So finding a more centralized location or multiple locations that are a little bit more accessible. And now, like I said, with Zoom, I mean, that's, you know, that may be the direction that we go in, where people don't have to actually come to the open house now that people are comfortable with it. So, you know, interested in ideas on that too. So.
Then I know I have more. Hold on. Oh, well, I think Tracy kind of already asked a similar question, but looking at the one of those last slides where and thank you, Paul, for breaking down those numbers so well. But looking at kind of the discrepancies that are happening between the demographics of the applicant pool versus those enrolled at VSAA particularly. And this may not be a question that we can answer yet, but do we have any ideas for how we can address that discrepancy or kind of some solutions to how we can make that a little bit more equitable?
And can I jump in? I'm sorry, really quick. I'm so sorry. On Wendy's question, if I could just jump and add in, were you surprised by the results? That's were you surprised by the results? And then the second part of, well, I'm not trying to say the second part. Yes, the question first, but what are our ideas?
I'm going to start in part work from Kamara back to Wendy, and then Paul can jump in here. In some respects, we were not surprised based upon just, you know, history, right? And understanding kids and programs and where they land. Specific to the question that Wendy asked, Paul could probably address that better than I could in terms of the data that we've looked at over time. I think what's healthy is actually that we do this. And I think, as you've already noted, we take pretty seriously annually looking at opportunity. It isn't just about the opportunities for outreach. It's about, as we looked at the map, that was pretty telling, right? So we've got to take a look at the program, and I know that we will with Lori, and say, well, what might we do a little different in that one little area that I noted in the triangle. So it will inform us, and now is the right time to be doing that, because the magnet application process, I know it seems might seem surprising to you, but here we are approaching November 1, and we actually start ramping up and started getting all of the material and the timelines together, and that's what Jim will be working on with the team, with Mark, and so this is helpful. Paul, do you want to add anything?
Well, as somebody who deals in statistics, I'm dealing here with a sample size of 2 that I'm really familiar with. And so if I know that VSAA isn't looking simply to only or to largely accept students who are already proficient in English language arts and math, but there's something about the process that is creating that outcome. I don't know what alternatives are, but I do know that a random lottery, as we use at Itech, has worked well in that regard, and it's borne out in the statistics over these 5 years, and in the periodic studies that I've done, taking a look at this over the last few years. So it's I think it's we need some creativity from principals and the leadership team, and others who may have ideas about how we can improve the process so that it is more equitable to all students and not simply those who are already proficient.
And I think Lori wants to respond here as well, because she and I have had some brief conversations as we dug into this data, and it's been telling. So Lori has some thoughts on that.
So this is our 25th year as a school, and you know, we have a long tradition of getting to know students through the process of our workshops. And it's not been the belief of our staff that, nor mine, quite frankly, that just a random sort of students would be the best approach. And so clearly there's some data that's pointing us in a direction. We work on refining our processes every year, and certainly this gives us some more direction as far as that goes. But I wouldn't necessarily say that that would be a random lottery. I was actually reading Yemi Stembridge's book today, and you know, just was reminded when he talked about the difference between equality and equity. And equality is sort of giving the same to all, and equity means that we are giving more to those who need it. And so what I would say is that if we make revisions to our process, I think we would hope to do more than just accept students based on a random sort, that we would take it a step further and really look at how are we going to impact the underrepresented demographics and be very intentional about that.
If I could just comment, and I know no one's really asking for my opinion, but I totally agree. I like the fact that the school has chosen like a group of people that can jive together. It's got this certain energy. but you're thinking, how can we impact this group? The question should be, how can they impact us? And that's the problem I see. Like, if we're used to seeing people that look like us and speak like us and talk like us, then that's what we're looking for. So we'll even if we're looking in terms of equity instead of, you know, equality, then we're still, if we're looking in those terms instead of like, how do we diversify our, how do we create a space that builds more for all of us? It's not going to always look like you think it's going to look. So we have to kind of broaden our perspective. And I just want to put that out there. I think that's a problem. Someone's not asking you to put them at the same level. They're asking you to see them at the same level and see what they can bring to the table.
If I could just weigh in just briefly here, as the board is aware, we are conducting a system-wide equity audit, and that equity audit will focus in part on our district magnet programs and schools of choice, and examine some of the data that Paul and John and others from our APM team have pulled in advance of this study session. I suspect that we're not the first district in the nation that has tackled this question of not just access and opportunity, but fundamentally enrollment in high-performing schools. I'm aware of school systems all across the nation that have wrestled with this very important question. So I suspect that we may have some recommendations to consider as a function of that equity audit. In the meantime, I hear Lori and Mike and Paul and other members of our district leadership team and building leadership team leaning into this equity conversation in the right way, which is really about how do we create not necessarily equal outcomes, but more equitable outcomes relative to opportunities, enrollment, and results. So I think, you know, we have an opportunity here in the short term to make some incremental progress, and certainly as a function of the equity audit, perhaps more substantive recommendations that might cause us to think more deliberately as a system relative to admission processes across the district.
And I was not trying to be insulting. I think that everyone on this team is doing exactly that, but these are difficult conversations. And I just think, I'm just like, as a person who's here to represent a group of people, I just want everyone to know that a lot of times we think about how we're going to help a group instead of how that group's going to help us. And that's kind of how it broadens the perspective. But I absolutely agree with everything you said, Steve. And I think that everyone's done a great job. I think that VSA has been this beacon to those who have been the outsiders. So I'm hoping that they can broaden that kind of outside perspective, and that's all I'm trying to get to. But thank you.
Absolutely, receive the message as intended.
Wendy?
Yeah, I just want to echo. I mean, I think everyone deserves a ton of credit, because there have been a lot of, clearly a lot of creative solutions already thought of to address some of these discrepancies, inequities, however you want to phrase it. And we're seeing results from those changes. And so I applaud all the efforts that have been made already. And I am definitely appreciative of everyone's willingness to kind of look at it critically and continue to work kind of in the same, just kind of keep making that same progress, you know, like we're not there yet, right? So that doesn't mean we haven't made a lot of progress, but the last thing I just want to point out, and this is not necessarily, this is more of a kind of a throwing something out there for Steve while we're on the topic of magnet programs. I just want to put it on our radar in terms of our board policy with regards to magnet programs, because we have VITA, which is not addressed. None of our it's only secondary that's addressed in board policy. And so that's something that we need to be thinking about in the future, is how our board policy needs to be reviewed or refined in order to address the elementary programs.
Yeah, that's certainly in the queue. We've got a bit longer of a runway, but we certainly won't lose sight of that.
I think you guys have answered all my questions. Thank you for your patience.
I have two more, sorry, before everybody turns off. So the first one, and this is actually not focusing on VSAA and Itech, so Darby and Lori, you can take a breather. It has to do with the other comprehensive high schools, and that is transportation. So what role does transportation play in serve as a barrier for some of these students? When you look and see that, I believe, I don't have the numbers exactly, but only 11% of IB students come from Fort, and similar with SMT, and then vice versa. I know it's not 0% are in the welding program from River, because I know one of the kiddos that's in the welding program from River, but how is that impacting how is that creating barriers for our students?
Mark, can you speak to the shuttle transportation system that we deploy to ensure that transportation is not a barrier?
Sure. As you mentioned, all of those programs within district, we offer shuttle service to and from their home high school. So all the student has to do is get to their home high school, and then we shuttle them to the program and back from the program, whether it's half day or full day. So really, it is a non-barrier.
That's terrific. Is that relatively new?
Nope. I think that's been a practice as long as the programs have been around.
Okay.
From the start, I
Okay.
remember looking at this along 15, 20 years ago.
Okay, great. That's good to know. And then one more thing, and this is more of it's going to have to be a deep dive kind of thing, but just putting it out there, one of the notable lack of representation in a lot of the areas was free and reduced lunch. And there's a lot of components to why that is the case. You can't just say because of free and reduced lunch. There's a lot of whys in why free and reduced lunch is underrepresented. And I think that somebody needs to do all of us need to do a real deep dive into, so what are the reasons behind students that are on free and reduced lunch not being represented accurately in so many of these programs? And it's the last thing I want to say. And actually, it isn't. Haha, joke. I think that having Tamara part of that discussion, because I think with the FCRCs and trying to figure out, so how do we create representation, I think that would be an awesome opportunity. But now I'm done.
Thanks, Kathy. That was notable to us as we dug into the data, and we've also had Tamara has also been part of our review at our operations group where we reviewed this in preparation too. So it's on the radar.
Great.
Dr. Strong, can I make just a quick comment? If you notice in our outreach, one of the things we brought up there was the partnership with Tamara and the FCRCs. So just in the last 2 years, we've had our magnet coordinators go out and give presentations to her advisory group to help try to be more inclusive of that group as one step. So we are thinking about those, and we are trying to expand the outreach.
Great.
Thanks, Mark.
I just wanted to chime in here. I've been busy taking notes, but thank you to everyone for this presentation. My family actually moved into Vancouver public school boundaries because of the programs of choice, and we wanted to have these opportunities, and had kids participate in dual language, which is not necessarily part of our magnet program, but it is still programs of choice. And now I have a very lucky 6th grader who's participating at VSAA. And I just wanted to touch on one thing that was addressed in the presentation. The school Mint, the application process, was so extremely accessible and easy to navigate. And I think that, you know, as we're looking at this data and looking at if there's discrepancies between who's enrolling and who's applying, which there weren't tremendous, the next level is really looking at the discrepancies of our overall population and how do we do better outreach. And just knowing that as someone who just went through this last January, the process was accessible it was easy. So thank you for all that are involved in that. Obviously, I am someone that really liked data, so thank you, Paul, for the presentation. I think that that's some really good analysis to show us where we are. But what I liked most about the presentation is that it's really, the data is kind of helping us find a path forward. So it's informing kind of continued efforts towards our outreach and creative problem solving in these discussions. So I don't have a question. I just wanted to say thank you because I think that this is, at least when we brought this up at our January retreat, this was the type of presentation or information discussion that I was hoping for. So thank you.
Thank you. Last call on questions. If there aren't, I do want to take the opportunity here to really thank the team for working hard. They're a great group of folks. And I do want to thank the board for giving us some thought here, or some things to think about and consider relative to additional data. I want also to say that what you heard here from the group is really indicative of the way we have always operated with these programs. I really earnestly mean that in terms of striving for ways to, and my team has heard me say this, I say this sincerely, I use the metaphor opening doors. And how do we continually look for ways to open doors for students and families in our system? And I'll frame it another way. If you consider sometimes how doors are closed for people or never even opened, and sometimes we have to be the ones opening it for them. That's our responsibility. And the team knows that this is how we really always look at it. We ask those hard questions. And I actually think that's why we become better and better in terms of the delivery of these services to students and families. So those are my closing remarks. It's really about how we think about those we want to reach and do so with great intention. So thank you.
All right, well, I cannot again express my appreciation for everybody's hard work. I want to say thank you. Mike, definitely thank you for leading the team, and Jim, Christina, Mark, Paul. I wrote all your names down so I won't forget anybody. Lori, Darby, Alex, and Andy, thank you all so much for participating.
Yes, thank you guys, you're awesome.
These programs are, seriously, they're amazing, and the passion that you all feel for your programs is palpable, and I really appreciate all of the efforts that you put into making them excellent programs to be proud of, for sure. I don't think we have any other questions or any other comments, but that was a great meeting. I really appreciate everybody's efforts. And Dr. Webb, do you have anything to add?
I do not.
Okay, well then we will go ahead and adjourn the meeting. Good night, everybody.
Good night.